Call me crazy, but I think, and I really do believe this, that college football is starting to get some equality back. I know, you're sitting there going, yo Matt, what exactly do you mean by that? I'm glad you asked that question. What has it been now, the past 15, 16, 17 something years? The sport has been dominated by the SEC. Yeah, we had Ohio State win it back in 2014, and then Clemson, they won it twice, but ever since then, the national champion has always been from the SEC. And it's not like the SEC has had only one good team every single year competing for the championship. Some years, they got two teams playing for the championship. Whenever you hear people or it's brought up about the SEC's dominance, everybody says the same thing. Oh, well, it's not really the SEC, it's more of Alabama's carrying the conference. I would have to strongly disagree with that. Now, don't get me wrong, Alabama has played a big and major part into the reason they have been successful, but it's not everything. Right before Alabama won their championship, you had Florida win a couple. Right after Bama won one, you had Auburn win one. You've also had Georgia win one recently, and also LSU. The reason Alabama stands out a little more is because they've won a lot more and they're more consistent. Whereas for Auburn and LSU, I'm not going to say it was a fluke year because it wasn't, but it was a one-time thing. That's why whenever there's this whole debate about the SEC being the best conference ever, everybody says Alabama's the reason they are. I get it 100%, but are we not going to look at the facts? In 2011, LSU and Alabama was playing for the championship. So theoretically speaking, if Alabama wouldn't have won that championship, you still would have had an SEC team win it. Same thing can apply to Alabama and Georgia a few years ago. If Alabama wouldn't have won that one, an SEC team still would have won the championship. And then most recently, the championship that happened a few months ago. I brought all that up to talk about this. I don't think the SEC is going nowhere, but I think some of the other conferences are going to get slightly better. Or maybe not the conferences, here's a better way to say it. The geographical location of the teams being great, it might start to even out. Think about it. All the recent champions, they're from the Southeast. And the only other two schools outside of the SEC that have been competing and winning championships is Clemson out of the ACC, and they're close to the South, and you also got Ohio State. I'm sorry, Michigan fans, I can't throw you in that conversation. You're not even close to being ready to compete for championships. The difference between Ohio State and Michigan, it's not even as close as some of y'all think. Ohio State's up here, and Michigan is way below them. I already know somebody's going to say, well, Matt, they beat them last year. That makes your argument invalid. Yeah, they did beat them, and they should have won the game, but just because you beat Ohio State one time in the past 400 years, it doesn't mean you're up next or you're about to start competing for championships. Here's the only argument I need for Ohio State and Michigan, and I want you to hear me out. Michigan's goal every season is to beat Ohio State. Ohio State's goal every season is to win championships. They're different. They're not even in the same realm. Did y'all not find it fishy when Michigan was acting like they won the Super Bowl after beating Ohio State? Take nothing away from Ohio State. They had a great offense. They got a great quarterback in CJ Stroud, but their defense is terrible. Or at least it was terrible last year. The same thing can be said for Auburn football. Auburn plays to beat Alabama. Alabama plays for championships. They're not in the same category. And don't worry, I didn't forget about the Big 12 or whatever that is, because Texas and Oklahoma, they're now about to join the SEC. I don't think nobody's going to argue with this. Yeah, I'll try to give Oklahoma the benefit of the doubt. They have been getting to the playoff, but when they are getting to the playoffs, they're wetting the bed. They're not even showing up. But I do want to give the credit where it's due. They have been getting there, and they have been the most consistent team out of the Big 12. Ladies and gentlemen, though, the one side of the country, and maybe the most impactful side of the country, is out west, and we haven't had a team compete or even be relevant out of there in so long. I think you know exactly what I'm referring to. We're talking about the Pac-12, more importantly USC. The state of California is arguably one of the best places to live, not just in the United States, but anywhere in the world. People want to go there and people love living there. If you're a multimillionaire and you got so much money saved up, of course, that's the dream place to live. But if you're scraping by, no, that is the worst place to live. It's super expensive. That's the thing, though. There's a lot of money to be made out there, and people out there, they do love their sports. Unfortunately, when you're talking about college football, they haven't had a good college team in forever. I'm not saying it's going to change, but just looking at the cold hard evidence and facts, it's appearing it might start to change really soon. They just got Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, the list goes on and on. I don't even think USC's rebuilding, but they're on the come up. They're going to win 10 games next year, no questions asked. The Pac-12 is terrible. Whether they win 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 games, it doesn't matter. But what does matter is there's excitement out west. And that's what we need for the landscape of college football. Let me ask you a real question. When's the last time you said to yourself or said to one of your friends, hey, you want to stay up and watch that Pac-12 game tonight? Never. If you have said that in the past recent years, you're either bored or you have nothing else to do. Most of y'all on the East Coast, you know what I'm talking about, how them Pac-12 games, they come on at midnight or 11 p.m. Me personally, I would love nothing more than to stay up late till 2 or 3 a.m. and watching a top team in the country. But that's the problem. Nobody in the Pac-12 has been a top team in the country. So when you got USC who's 6-4 playing Washington State who's 4-6, I'm not staying up till 2 a.m. to watch that bull crap. However, when you have Caleb Williams at quarterback, Lincoln Riley the head coach, and just some excitement around the team, I'll consider staying up, and I think I will this year. That's what college football has been lacking the past couple of years. The market out west, you can make an argument and say it's bigger than out east. The fan base for the Southeast and even the Big Ten, I'd throw in that conversation, they're always going to be bigger and better for their teams than it's going to be out west. The ACC, they have good fan bases, but it's not like the Southeast. The reason for that is fairly simple. Look at Alabama, the #1 football team in the country the past 12 to 13 years. They don't have a pro team in any sport in that state. So that means if you're from Alabama, you just gravitate to rooting for the college football team. That's what you learn to live, eat, breathe, and sleep by. On the other hand, let's say if you live in California like we're talking about, they have pro teams left and right. That's the real difference with fan bases in the Southeast, and I'd even say the Big Ten, than out west. Out west, if you live in California or Las Vegas, you got so many pro teams to root for. Going back to Oklahoma and Texas though, I'm not worried about Oklahoma. I know they got a new coach and they got a new quarterback. They got new everything almost. I think they're going to be fine. The real team everybody's going to lock in on, and I think they've seen a lot of benefits from the transfer portal and the NIL, is Texas. Texas is a huge and prestigious football brand. I mean, look at their high school football. We've already talked about it. It's insane. The market for college football in that state, it's out of this world. Texas and California, ironically, they've both had the same problem. They love football, but they've been terrible at it. That's also kind of strange if you think about it, because Texas and California, they're known for having the most 4- and 5-star recruits, yet their college football programs have been terrible. It's just weird. Anyways, if Texas and California both are seemingly on the rise next year, that's just going to be great for everybody. I just really feel like we're starting to see the college football world and landscape diverse finally for the first time in 10 years. You can say what you want about the NIL and transfer portal, as much hate as it's gotten, if it wouldn't have been implemented, none of this would have happened. It might have happened a little later on, but there's one thing for sure, it wouldn't have happened as soon as it is right now. Everything's going really fast, and I happen to like it. But anyways, we gotta get on topic with the main focal point of this video. We got not 1, not 2, but 3 topics to talk about. Let's start off with this one first. Texas star running back Bijan Robinson, if you don't know who he is, go look him up. He was great last year, and I think he's the best running back in football heading into next year. Him and Lamborghini, yes, Lamborghini, they now have a partnership. I don't have too much to say about it. I just found it really interesting because we see a lot of quarterbacks and running backs. They do partnerships with Ford, Chevy, just a normal car company, not Lamborghini. A main reason he probably got the opportunity is because one of their dealerships is in Austin, Texas. That's just insane. Imagine if I told you a couple years ago that college football players were going to be driving Lamborghinis due to partnerships going on. It's just crazy how fast things have changed, and I love it. It also goes to show you that Texas, I'm telling you, the market out there for football players, it's massive. You're now going to have some of these other 4- and 5-star recruits looking at that going, hey, I want to drive a Lamborghini. I mean, who doesn't? If you think that's not going to persuade at least 1 to 2 players in high school, I think you're out of your mind. Much respect to him though, he's put in the work, he's been awesome on the field, he deserves it. For those of you that don't like it, I'm going to offer you this. The amount of fans and money he's more than likely brought into Texas, it's worth 20 more times than a Lamborghini. Moving on to our second topic, it goes hand in hand with what we just talked about, and that's the NIL. Many thought this would happen in a year or two, but it's already been reported, it's happening now. The NCAA has finally put in new guidelines for the NIL. It's pretty much self-explanatory, and I don't want to overcomplicate it. I'll try to dumb it down as easy as possible. All they basically said they're going to be watching is to make sure that boosters aren't recruiting these kids. So in other terms, they want to make sure that boosters aren't buying recruits out of high school. There's also the argument that they're still going to get away with it, and I think they will. It's not going to stop anything, at least in my opinion. I'm going to read you this comment somebody from Notre Dame said, and I agree with it 100%. He said, quote unquote, We've got to stop complaining. This is the world we're in, and the last time I checked, we make pretty good money. So everybody should shut up and adjust. If you've been watching the videos, you know how I feel about the NIL and transfer portal. I love it. The players, they deserve to get paid. If somebody's willing to pay you in America, you should be able to collect that money. If they pay you the money and you're terrible and you flop on the football field, that's not your fault. That's the company's fault. They put an investment in you and they didn't get a return back. That's how the world works. I understand where the people that don't like it are coming from. They don't like how these schools are buying players, but it is what it is. I don't know what y'all want to happen. Whenever you come to the terms with, that's the reality. And like this Notre Dame whoever said, it's the world we live in. You got to get used to it. I don't know if some of you have noticed, not in college football, but in your everyday life, people, for some reason, they love to complain. I'm going to tell you one thing right now. I can't stand being around people that complain. I'm more of a problem solver. Me complaining about it, it's not going to fix anything. Let's talk about how we can solve the problem, not complain about it. And last but not least, here's where I stand on it. This isn't just football talk, by the way. This is for your everyday life. Let's say you're a Pittsburgh fan and you're mad about Jordan Addison, your star wide receiver, going to Alabama or USC because they're going to pay him a ton of money. You can do two things in this situation. You can either mope and complain about it, or you can start doing what these other teams are doing. You didn't really see Nick Saban crying about the NIL and transfer portal. He did say he didn't like it, but he didn't say he wasn't going to use it. I'm sure some of you have at least heard this quote one or maybe multiple times, but it applies and goes hand in hand with this situation. If you can't beat them, join them. If you can't stop these teams from tampering, if you're tired of it, if you can't beat them, then shut up and join them. Start doing what they're doing. And I really hate the fans complaining about it, because your team more than likely is going to steal a player from another college and you're not going to complain about it. You're going to laugh about it and be happy. The only people complaining about the NIL and transfer portal is people losing players, not gaining them. Should tampering be in the game? No, but guess what? It's in the game, so you might as well use it to your advantage. Yes, the NCAA, they're going to put in guidelines like they already have, but it's not going to stop all the illegal recruiting going on. I'll give you a great example. The speed limit on your highway, it may say 55 miles per hour, but I guarantee you 9 out of 10 cars are going 60. You can set these rules and regulations all you want, but people are gonna break them. It's not just college football, people. It's a way of life. It's how the world works. You can either watch people going 60 and passing your car every day pointing and laughing at you, or you can join them and start going 60 as well. Moving on to our third and final topic, we're gonna go back to Alabama and talk about what their new star wide receiver tweeted out. It was short and simple, but it got a lot of people talking. He tweeted out natty season with a ring and put hashtag RTR, which means roll tide roll. For those of you that don't know, this new wide receiver is Jermaine Burton, and he might be the next Jameson Williams. I'm not talking about how they play and their speed wise, but he transferred in from Georgia, and he's looking to do the same thing Jameson did. Come into Alabama, play for Bryce Young, put up crazy stats, and go in the first round. I gotta be honest, I think that's exactly what's gonna happen. He was a beast for Georgia, they just didn't throw him the ball a lot. But I do want to give my 2 cents on the situation. For the past 10 or so years, when all these preseason polls come out and people predict their national champion, Alabama's always in the mix. But here's my biggest question, and it goes back with what we talked about earlier on in this video. Are we sure that Alabama in the SEC is still going to dominate like they have the past few, or not few, but the past 10 to 15 years? We know that Alabama, they're going to be a great team next year. They got Bryce Young, Will Anderson, and a bunch of receivers coming in. But my question to you guys, I'm very curious, let me know in the comment section, is Alabama the favorites? I sat back and looked at it, and I paid attention to the cold hard facts. Ohio State's defense is a mess, and I don't think they're going to be all too great this year. But their offense, you got CJ Stroud coming back, I think they're going to be great. And with the Big Ten being the way it is, outside of Michigan, Ohio State, that conference isn't really that good. I think Ohio State has a great chance to get to the playoff. Can they win the playoff? Can they win the championship? Yes. Are their chances as good as Alabama? No, but you never know what's going to happen. So Ohio State is definitely in the mix, and I just got to throw them in there because I love CJ Stroud. Another school I want to bring up that nobody's talking about is Georgia. Every time these schools win a championship, we always talk about can they go back to back. But with Georgia, we're just like, okay, they got their one championship. They're not going to do nothing next year. We'll talk about this in a different video, maybe tomorrow. I do understand they lost a ton of players to the draft and their team's depleted, but you do have Stetson Bennett coming back. I'm not even going to say too much about that. If you've been watching this channel, you know how I feel about Bennett. That's a different topic for a different day. I'm not saying Georgia can win the championship, but who's going to beat them out of the East? And I'm talking about the SEC East. If I had to pick a team right now to play Alabama in the championship, I'm picking Georgia. Not the national championship, but the SEC championship. We've seen it before. Georgia can lose one game or even lose in the SEC championship and still get to the playoff. But outside of Georgia and Alabama, I don't think there's a team in the SEC that could even come close to winning a championship. And I'm not even too sold on Georgia even being all too great this year. So out of the Big Ten and the SEC, you got maybe Georgia, but I think Ohio State and Alabama, they're real contenders. Throwing it to the ACC, they're a mess. It's an awful conference outside of Clemson, and they have some major quarterback issues. DJ Uiagalelei, he's barely good. He's not great. He's not taking you anywhere. Their backup quarterback is far better. Will Dabo Swinney have big enough balls to bench DJ? I guess we'll have to wait and see. I don't think Clemson is a real contender because their defense, they're good. They're always good, but their offense, wishy-washy. It's 2022, about to be 2023. If you don't have a great offense, you're not winning a championship. Those are the three main Power Fives, and then we got to throw it to the Big 12 and then the Pac-12. I think we can all agree we're in the same boat. If any team's going to win a championship out of the Pac-12, it's going to be USC. Is USC ready to compete for championships? I don't know, but I'm not going to say they're not ready. I think they have a great chance, not a good chance, a great chance of getting into the college football playoff. Because out of the Pac-12, who's going to stop them? That conference is a laughingstock. It's a joke, and until some other teams get better, you're not changing my mind. Lincoln Riley is notorious for wetting the bed in the playoff, but if they can get to the playoff, you never know what can happen. The only downside to USC, and I hate this, I think they have one of the worst defenses going into next year. You can have great wide receivers, you can have Caleb Williams, but if your defense is trash, you're not doing nothing. But I do want to say out of the Pac-12, they have the best shot. And last but not least, we have the Big 12, so it's either going to be Texas or Oklahoma. I'm not too sold on Baylor, and I'm not even too sold on Texas, but they do have great recruits. You also get Steve Sarkisian. I think he could be a good head coach or even a great one, but I don't think Texas is all there right yet. And look at Oklahoma. They're in the same boat as Texas. They're going to have a new quarterback, and their quarterback's not going to be as good as Quinn Ewers, so it's almost a rebuild. I really don't see anybody out of the Big 12 even coming close to competing for the championship. Oh yeah, I do want to bring it up. I know there's going to be some Texas A&M fans say, what about us? And guess what? Jimbo Fisher, he's a fraud. Y'all ain't doing nothing. Well, Matt, how could you say that? We beat Alabama last year. Yeah, you beat them on your home field and it was a fluke. Why am I calling it a fluke? Because Alabama's defense was atrocious. Bryce Young put up 38 on the road and lost the game. And guess what? Alabama's defense this year, they're going to be one of the best in the SEC. So yeah, I don't really care too much about that win last year. You know why? Because after that win, you didn't do nothing. You got worse. Yeah, you beat the #1 team in the country, but you lost games after it and you looked terrible. So going back to Jermaine Burton's tweet, the star wide receiver from Alabama, is he wrong? I mean, who's going to stop him? We just took a look at every conference, and there's no real contenders anywhere. Nobody in the Big 12 or Pac-12 is a threat. Ohio State, yeah, their offense is great, but their defense is terrible. And then you got Clemson. They're not going to be competing for a championship. So the only real threat to Alabama is, ironically, Alabama. If you don't know what I mean by that, it's fairly simple. Alabama fans, you know what I'm talking about. Whenever they lose, even announcers, they say the same thing. The only body that can beat Alabama is Alabama themselves. If they have 4 or 5 giveaways or turnovers in a game or anything like that, yeah, somebody could upset them. But when you have Bryce Young at quarterback, he already won the Heisman Trophy. He doesn't turn the ball over a lot. I don't see that happening. He also has real weapons now, and you got to remember, yeah, he had John Mechie last year and Jameson Williams, but they were rarely on the field at the same time. Realistically speaking, and I'm curious, let me know, who's going to stop them? Their defense is about to be one of the best defenses they've had ever since maybe 2015 or 2016. Their offense isn't going to take a step backwards. If anything, they're going to get better. They just got one of the best running backs, and they're continuing to get more weapons at the wide receiver position. I don't really see Georgia stopping them. Heck, Georgia had the best defense in the country last year, and they couldn't even stop them when Bryce Young had 2 healthy wide receivers. Also got to take into account, a lot of these Bama players got a bad taste in their mouth from what happened last year. If you think they're not coming for revenge, you're sadly mistaken. Personally, yeah, I believe Alabama's going to win the championship next year. I just don't see who or how anyone's going to stop them. But I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section who could stop them or who could win the championship. But with all that being said, that's going to be